when you're selling and marketing as well, it's this fine line between being someone who's a peer that they can relate to, but also being the expert that adds that extra oomph to your product, because that's what makes it different than them going down the street and buying the same product from somebody else.
Ardath Albee is an expert at creating contagious online content and e-marketing strategies that turn prospects into buyers.
So how would you go about starting a lead nurturing program if I wanted to get one going? What recommendations would you make?
First of all, it's all about the customer. So you have to know your customer and you need to know them really well. And it's not just one database of customers. You need to learn how to segment your customers. The content that appeals to one set of customers is not going to appeal to a different segment. And the reason for that is because everybody has a different stake in the game, depending on their industry, their culture.
She helps businesses flip their focus, enabling them to increase customer engagement and drive continuous growth in an increasingly digital world.
She really rattled my cage because our reps are going too long of an email. So I have a lot of changing to do with our force when we get back.
With every interaction, what is the buyer going to think you want from them? If you want to help, it's a totally different response than if you want to sell them something. Your product is your product. There's probably other choices out there. So what makes the difference is the impact that you add to the product, okay? And the difference you can make for them in the outcome.
You've got to define your customers, and you need to determine how you're going to break out segments. And it doesn't have to be a big, huge, complex undertaking. You can say, okay, I'm going to break them out by role, or I'm going to break them out by industry. Start small and then continue to refine your list. And the key point is to have a marketing automation system is really helpful to track their activity, so you can learn more about their interests and start defining that way. That allows you to create content that has a really high percentage of connecting and being contagious.
If they have to work really hard to figure out how your product or solution works for them or applies to their situation, they're not going to do it, okay? They don't have time, and they don't know how to think about it.
What kind of projects do you do for companies?
Take a look at their website content. I help them create personas and strategic ways to personalize their content depending on the resources they can throw at the issue. And I help them analyze the analytics, if you will, the intelligence gathering, and determine what the valuable pieces of that are. Because analytics have just exploded, and you know as well as I know that there are so many different numbers you can look at. I help them determine which are the important numbers that define interest so they can continue to build engagement.
It's not just about going after the decision maker anymore. You have to do that, but you also have to get people talking and get consensus. And you do that by talking to them about the ideas and the values that matter to each one of them.
Now, what I hear you saying, though, is that with all these different segments and different decision makers, and then you hear people talking about niche marketing, it just seems to me there'd be so many different small groups and segments. How do you handle all the different niches and still be effective when you only have so many people in your organization?
I deal with that all the time. Marketing departments seem to be limited, and they're charged with pulling off events and creating advertising and brand awareness, not to mention content strategies and e-marketing communications and those kinds of things. There's one tip I can give you that makes it rather simple. If you're creating an article for a nurturing campaign, for example, you would choose one segment and write the article. Then you go back and you look at that article and you say, okay, for this other segment, let me go find the places where I address that particular segment. What would shift for this segment? Whereas this particular issue may be important for your first segment, there may be a whole different issue that's important for your second segment. And you can simply use the same article and shift it for 2 or 3 segments. Don't try to do 12 or 15 segments. You'll make yourself crazy. But, start breaking it down 1, 2, 3 segments.
For more information or workshops on how to transform blog content into customer-attracting messaging, visit marketinginteractions.com or call 612-865-7707.
She had some very good concrete ideas that I can actually take back and use right away.
I tell my clients, don't put your product in your message at all. at all. Because that's not how to get their attention. Get their attention by talking about valuable ideas. When they start talking to you about it and they say, oh, how do you do that? Well, my product, the Whiz Bang 5000, helps you by blah, blah, blah. You need to really know your customers and know what is relevant to them.